In this video, I'm going to cover IBM Copy Services Manager 629. This was released in the end of June of 2020. So what I'll cover in this video is a quick overview of what is CSM. Hopefully several of you already know, and maybe you can skip to the meat of the presentation, but I'll go over overview for those who don't. And then I'll go into what's new. So what is CSM? So CSM is your one-stop shop for IBM storage system replication. We're easy to install, easy to set up, and easy to manage. The whole point of CSM is to help put together a lot of these solutions that are multi-site or involve your a remote copy plus a point-in-time copy, etc. Just these any kind of complex thing you can create with CSM and the replication with an easy one push of a button: start, stop, recover, etc. So we provide that easy automation without having to create the massive scripts that you used to in the past, which could be error prone. You forget a volume, you miss type of volume. That's all done away with CSM. You can see what the volumes are prior to issuing the commands, and then once they're all in the session, they're all managed together. It's designed for managed at scale for thousands of relationships in large, both distributed and mainframe environments. So we cover both DS8000 storage systems as well as all the Spectrum storage systems. We install on pretty much any platform you can think of: the Windows, Linux, AX, ZOS, and Linux or Z systems. And now will come pre-installed even on the DS8000 HMC. So if you want to, you already have a DS8000 HMC, you can purchase the CSM license and start running from there immediately. We're disaster recovery and high availability solutions, so we manage Z Hyperswap as well as have integration with the PowerHA Hyperswap solutions. So very strong presence particularly in I-series environments where a lot of the advanced copy services run using CSM, particularly the 3-site type solutions. We have a practice solution that allows you to practice the way you would recover. This comes in very handy for a lot of customers that want to practice their IPLing off a remote site while still maintaining their DR capabilities. And then last, we have a lot of user protection. So we have warning prompts that show you dynamic pictures so you make sure you're issuing the correct command, user roles, event thresholds, and now we even have dual control support so you can make sure that there's a second person that says, okay, let's issue that command and validates it before you can issue it off. All right, so what's new in 629? Here's your quick screenshot of it. I'll go ahead and jump to it after you take a quick look, and let's go. All right, so what's the first one? First feature in 629 is based off of RFE 112047. So what this customer wanted and they requested was some warning messages when only a single logical path is established. So just as a refresher, CSM will use any logical paths already configured on the DS8000. However, if there are none, we will establish one path. Now, why don't we establish multiple paths automatically? Well, that's usually because while we can discover the ports, we don't know which give you true redundancy. So we do have a CSV file out there. It does allow you to set up these port pairing definitions on a box-to-box, on a LSS to LSS, or odd-even LSS level. That's probably the easiest way to manage logical paths on the DS8000. Set that up and the session will use it. However, in those events that you forget or maybe some paths went away, the user wanted a way to say, hey, I only have one logical path out there. The session should tell me because I don't have that redundancy. So in this release, we introduced a new warning message. It's the IWNR 2767W message. It will appear on the session as in the picture shows in the detailed status section, and the session will change to the warning state if it's not already severe. Severe always takes precedence, But if it's a normal state and you get this, we recognize there's only a single path, then we'll spit out the message and the session will go into a warning status. So at that point, the customer can then establish a path. We should recognize it, but we'll do it a periodic checking every now and then, so it might not immediately go away. If you want it to immediately go away, you can go to the storage systems panel and refresh the storage system, and we'll redo the query at that point. Say you're a customer, and now this happens by default, but say you're a customer, you only have one logical path. It's maybe you're doing migration or something, and you don't really want to see this. You can disable this. Go to the server properties under settings in the CSM GUI and add the com.ibm.csm.server disable path warning equal true to the property file. It's not already there, but add it to those set of properties, and the warning message will go away and the behavior will go back to pre-629 days. So hopefully this gives customers a little bit better feeling that, hey, we're going to warn you in the event that we really don't have that redundancy, that second set of paths out there. Right, the next feature is based off of RFE 128226. So what this wanted was a way to give us some more details when we had an authentication error with the DS8000 system. So previously, when you had, say, username, if you try to log into the password and got locked out, or if the password ended up expiring, we simply issued a 1650E message. We had a bunch of error codes, but the generic message just said that the authentication failed. Well, that doesn't help you out very much. But it turns out we do get a little bit more information back from the DS8000, and so we added that into the message. So the message will come back now, 1650E, with a possible 3 new reason codes, 31, 32, or 33. So you'll see that 31 is that the password, username or password used to connect was invalid. 32 is that the username that was used to connect to cluster does not exist, so you used a username that's not actually set up on the HMC. And the last one is that the password is locked or expired and needs to be reset. So now you'll get a little more detail when you hit this condition, so that you know better how to fix it, or maybe you don't even have to call in support in the event that it happens. All right, my next one is based off of RFE 139330. What this is added a discover command to the DS8000 FlashCopy relationships. So the request was to be able to discover FlashCopy. So CSM has never been able to discover FlashCopy relationships, and the primary reason we haven't done that in the past is because we cannot determine consistency for those discovered relationships across the entire session. Since CSM is session-based, we decided not to simulate them, and so if you flash, we will handle it. If there's relationships out there, we'll terminate and reflash them, but we won't be able to assimilate them and handle them as they were. Well, there were a few scenarios the customers presented to me in this RFE that you kind of do need to be able to discover the relationships. For instance, when you're doing a remote flash copy, what happens is CSM has a session for the flash at the primary site, but then the DS8000's remote flash copy feature will create the flash copy relationships at the secondary site. So that works all fine and dandy until you do the actual site switch. When you site switch, if they have a plan that basically handles it the same way whether they're running on either site, they're going to start flashing at the remote site, and with the remote flash copy feature flashing back again at the original site. The problem is with the design as it is today, prior to 629, you'd have to build a CSM session, and then that CSM session would end up terminating the relationships out there and reflash them. Which, if you use the incremental in the first flash, kind of negates all that incremental flash relationship, and you're starting from scratch. So for this kind of scenario, it's ideal if you could do the site switch, assimilate the relationships, and then start the flash from there. So what we did is we added a discover command. The discover command will go and query the hardware for any defined pairs, any pairs that are marked defined in the CSM session, and then move those to a target available and consistent state. So I must warn here that we do not have a way to determine consistency. We will automatically mark them consistent, but it's up to the user to make sure that how they're assimilating, how they're using the relationships is in a way that they understand that it's up to them to make sure that things were consistent. So in other words, if they flashed it one set of pairs at one time and another set of pairs at another time and tried to combine them in the same session, they better not do a recover expecting that all the volumes across that new session are data consistent across all the pairs. This is more for the case of maybe migrating a new server or simulating existing FlashCopy relationships out there where the user actually knows that were flashed last at the same time. I should note that the settings, the properties in the FlashCopy session for CSM always take precedence. So if you had established the pairs on the hardware with an incremental, but you didn't set incremental on the actual CSM session, when you go to discover the pairs will show them flashed, but when you go to flash the session, because you didn't set incremental, we will not do the incremental. We'll terminate and reflash. If the pairs were incremental on the hardware and you did set incremental on CSM, however, we should assimilate the pairs, see that they're incremental, and do the incremental flash on your next flash. Now, obviously, there are some cases where you may get a mixed configuration. So in these cases, you might have some that were incremental, some weren't. And the way the DS8000 works, we may not in CSM be able to remedy that situation. And so it may be necessary for you to remove the copy sets from a session, delete them, delete them from the hardware so that we can reflash them, or delete the ones that were not flashed with incremental yet, and so we can reflash them with incremental. And so there are some of those cases, but hopefully if you're managing this feature correctly, you won't hit any of that. All right, next one. This one had to do with our backups. So CSM has always had a backup feature for quite a while now, where we both have an auto backup, so there's some auto backup files that are out on your server, but also a manual backup, so you can create a backup from the CSM GUI if you decided to. But the problem was the backup was really just a backup of the database. We never had a all-encompassing backup that included, any property files, because you may make a property file changes, any JVM option changes, LDAP or basic authentication changes, certificate changes. All those weren't included in the backup. And so if you took that backup and used it on a migrate to an install on another server, you would have to make all those separate changes, copy the files over, etc., manually. So in this release, we finally added all those into our backup. Everything's zipped up into that backup zip, and then it can be used on a distributed install later on. The 629 installer is able to handle both backups that were backed at a 629 level, as well as backups that were handled pre-629. So it's able to see that if not all the files are there, if it's just the database, it'll handle it with just the database. But if all the files are there, they'll restore all those files and you should be good to go. I should note that while we do this backup, the ZOS installation still does not today support a migration type solution. We do have something to migrate there for TPCR to CSM, but it's not a real migration like the distributed side that can use the backup zip file that we have. You basically have to unzip the files and manually handle it in ZOS. So this hopefully will make it a lot easier to migrate between servers, a lot easier to restore a CSM instance in the event that the issue happens, especially given that there are a lot of properties out there that customers sometimes set manually now. All right, my next one is based off of RFE 142392. This is for support of disabling the Metro Mirror mode on sessions that should only be running a global copy. So as if you aren't aware, CSM does support global copy, but we do not have a global copy session. So what you do, you have to create a Metro Mirror failover failback session and start it in global copy mode. The global mirror session also supports global copy, but if you're looking for straight global copy, that's what you would do, is create a Metro Mirror failover failback session and then do the start GC command to start it in GC mode. So the problem with this that the customer had was that the start GC command and the start command, they're next to each other in the drop-down menu, and they didn't want someone to accidentally kick in this Metro Mirror mode, because in this particular case, they were migrating off of production volumes over a long distance, and if you switched that to Metro Mirror mode, you would obviously have extreme application impact. And so they wanted the ability to put in a migration mode, a GC-only mode, without the Metro Mirror mode start showing up at all. So in particular, they actually wanted a new session type, but I decided that this might be, well, one, simpler to develop, but two, makes it a little more flexible for you, because you may think you want to go GC only for a little while, but then eventually want to go Metro Mirror, and this prevents you having to remove the copy sets and add it into a Metro Mirror session and then do it that way. It's just a simple property. You go into the server properties from the CSM GUI, add the disable MMO dot session name into your equals true into your property, and that will add the session so that that will set the session so that when you go into the drop down, there's the little picture showing there, you will not see the start H1H2 command. You will only see the start GC command. So just a couple notes here. The session name is case sensitive, and if you have any spaces in the name, you need to replace those spaces with an underscore. There's a typo there. There's no dot at the end of the session name. It's just mm.mode.session equal true. I'll fix that later on, but just so you know, that's the property. You'll see it in the user's guide as well. But this should enable you and allow you to run in GC mode without having to without having to worry about accidentally clicking in Metro Mirror. I do want to warn you that the suspend command is still designed to drive the pairs to Metro Mirror and then do a consistent freeze. I did not disable that, so that is still potentially a command that could drive the pairs to Metro Mirror. If you want to just stop the commands, suspend them without a freeze or consistency, or that the application has stopped and everything's drained and everything's good, you can issue just the stop command. And that will suspend the commands individually. We won't be able to guarantee consistency across them, but if it's up to the user that can make sure that everything's consistent before they issue the stop. But the suspend command is still there to guarantee consistency, and so it will still drive the pairs to Metro Mirror. All right, so next RFE is 142321. This feature that we added in 629 was an interesting one. Basically, it's related to the last feature I just talked about, where the customer knew they were running in global copy mode for a reason, and it's going to stay in global copy mode. But today, pre-629 releases, that session would always show in a warning state. So basically, we would only show normal for a session if we knew that there was consistency there for at least one of the role pairs, main role pairs. But because we're in global copy mode, we always show a warning state, and that became problematic when they're looking at the overall status and they see a bunch of warning sessions and they're trying to track status at a glance, and the warning throws them off because they know they're supposed to be in a warning state, but they don't know, maybe there's some other issue there that they're not paying attention to, because warnings is basically its normal state. So what they wanted was to be able to get a global copy session into a normal mode. And so what I did was added in a threshold for the out of sync tracks. So percentage of the progress. I added in a property that you could set on the session, csm%.complete.warning.threshold, where that threshold indicates that if it goes above that threshold, it will go into the normal mode. If it goes below that threshold, that goes into a warning state. So this gives the customer what they wanted, but provides a little more meaning behind it, because maybe for some reason they restarted, but there was a high number of ooze, maybe a lot of they were suspended for a long time, and so they're obviously not in a normal type state. They're doing a lot of resync. We want it to be in a warning state, and so this threshold allows the global copy session to still show GC a warning for GC mode, but once it hits a certain threshold, maybe 90, 95%. I show 80 in this picture just for an example, but more than likely your case is going to be in the high 90s. Hopefully you're not tracking too much ooze normally. And so you can set that on the session, and it will go into preparing normal, so that they know that everything's running fine, everything's good. This is only available on the MetroMirror failover failback sessions today. That's what they were looking for. I aimed it there for now. We'll see how it goes. If it needs to be added to other sessions types, we can look at that in the future. But it's disabled by default, I should say, as well. So by default, it will always show warning. If you set that threshold to 100 or 0 or less than 0, it's going to act like it does today. But it's meant to, if you're in that middle range, then you can set it and get the normal status. All right, my next one is RFE 139014. And what is this but our externalization of the REST API? So CSM has had a RESTful API for quite a while now. However, it was mostly used internally. We never fully docked it so that customers could take advantage of it and program to it if they had their own automation. So what we've formally docked it. It's in a Swagger format to make it hopefully easier to read, and it's under our knowledge center so that they can go right to it, look at the how it works, and issue those RESTful calls for commands to sessions, tasks, etc. So hopefully this helps a lot of our customers that are trying to automate outside of CSM, but aren't internally using it today. But they have their own REST API interfaces. All right, my next one is a synchronous runtask command. So through our CSM CLI. So what is this? Well, as you know, CSM has the ability to create scheduled tasks, and we, in a recent release, added a runtask command in the CLI, so that through a batch job or other job, other external scripting command, you could call a CSM CLI in order to kick off one of these scheduled tasks. Well, the issue we found was that while they could run the task itself was asynchronous. And the reason why is asynchronous is because it could be long running. There's a lot of things, a lot of actions you can add to a scheduled task, a lot of wait for states to complete, wait for other stuff. And so even though you could kick it off from the CLI, it was designed so that the CLI would return right away and say, oh yeah, your task is running, and let you keep going. But when you're doing scripting, which involves waiting for the scheduled task to actually complete and then do another task that requires that the scheduled task to complete, it makes it hard when you have an asynchronous task. So what we did is we added a -synchronous option onto the run task, so that now when you issue the run task and you specify -synchronous, the CLI will hold and wait there until the scheduled task is actually completed. And then once it's completed, it'll come back, and then you can continue your tasks. Anything outside of that scheduled task, you can then run. In addition, it'll give you, if there's any failures, it'll tell you that it failed, and you can fall into some error state or error set of scripts versus the planned scripts. So hopefully this helps a little bit in the automation while using scheduled tasks. All right, RFE 142440. This is a stop on drain command. We added it in the metro mirror failover failback, global mirror failover failback, and global mirror either direction session because while the scheduled task did have a wait for percent complete, it's based off the asynchronous query that's always happening in the background and not necessarily right at the time of the command. So if you had a cascaded type situation where you had a session running global copy mode, but it was cascaded off of, say, a global mirror session, and you suspended the global mirror session, you'd want to make sure that we queried the hardware to make sure there's no ooze before we suspend the actual cascaded global copy. So that stop when drained will issue the set of queries to all the pairs, and once all the pairs have shown that there is no ooze, that they're all 100% copied, we will do the suspend. We'll do the individual suspend. It's not a freeze suspend. We'll do that individual stop across the pairs to ensure that they're all stopped. All right, next one is RFE 117871. This is our support for SVC FlashSystem consistency protection feature. So what is it? What is the consistency protection feature in SVC? It's using change volumes in either a metro mirror or global mirror relationship or consistency group, such that when you restart the relationship, after you suspended and you restarted in the original direction, the hardware will automatically use the change volume at the remote site to take a consistent copy, so that in the event that the resynchronization doesn't complete, you still have because of some disaster, you still have a recoverable relationship at the remote site. And so we had global mirror with change volumes. This took advantage of this feature automatically. However, there were some nuances there, but we never had a metro mirror capability to enable change volumes. So with 629, we added a metro mirror with change volume session type. You can add this change volume, start metro mirror, and you'll have metro mirror with the consistency protection for that metro mirror session automatically when you suspend and restart the session. So both nodes will both now metro mirror change volumes and global mirror change volumes will get this. On a note though, for metro mirror change volume sessions, the session will go automatically back to a prepared state when you restart it because of the consistency protection feature, and that's because the consistency group itself is marked as consistent, and that makes our session go consistent because a prepared normal state means you can actually recover the relationship. So what we did was, if we see that the RPO, the freeze time, is greater than 0 for that session on that consistency group on the hardware, we will now spit out a IWNR 2751W message. This will put the session into a warning state. And so you'll be prepared warning until the freeze time goes back to 0 for metro mirror. And that's essentially indicating that, with metro mirror sessions, you should have a 0 RPO. If you don't have a 0 RPO and you're started, then you're in either syncing, but if we're prepared, then that means we're in the consistency protection mode. So this is how you can tell we're in consistency protection, is if IWNR 2751 is shown as one of your status messages. I should also note that for global mirror change volumes, it is the same thing. It will go prepared right away because we're consistent. However, you should see that in the progress, you should see that the RPO is increasing up until it's finally forming consistency groups again. Right, and I believe this is one of my last features, but just note that we now support the FlashSystem 9200 systems. We did support them before, but they would show up, as a SVC option. We support any SVC-based storage system as they come out with them. However, if we don't know the model number, it may show up as an SVC versus the actual FlashSystem family name. But we added the official support for FlashSystem 9200 and 629, so it should show now as the 9200 system. Right, and this is my last document that I always put out, the little reference material. So you'll see the support portal, online support matrix, latest downloads, etc. So I hope you see we added a lot of features in 6.2.9, and a majority of them are actually coming from RFEs. So please continue to open those RFEs. Ask us for those features that you need in CSM. We want to make your lives easier. We want to make your replication easier. So hopefully what we're doing and the work we're doing is beneficial to you. And that's it for my video. Thank you for your time.